Future Talk Radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Welcome to All About Indigos with Kristie Reeves
and Candace Vandal.
Yay!
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 I'll give you another round of applause there, ladies.
Thank you, John.
You got it.
Today we're going to be talking more, going deeper into what the Indigos are all about. Woo! And
Yes.
if you have wondered if you're an Indigo, or maybe one of your children is an Indigo, or your husband, or your friend, we're going to talk about how you can find out if they might be an Indigo or not.
Absolutely. And we're also going to be sharing some of our own childhood stories of how we kind of first figured out something is different, but what is it?
Yeah.
And how that related to our entire childhood, probably.
Yes.
And adult life.
An adult life, because what we feel, a lot of these kids feel different. We felt different. And I have the feeling once we realize that this is kind of an Indigo thing, I feel it brings a sense of identity of who we are, because we feel so strange in a world where we feel like we don't fit in.
Amen.
Do you feel like that too, John?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's so true. And I also think as you learn about what Indigo is, as we go through all these characteristics, you will very obviously see how all of these things actually facilitate wholeness, facilitate more union and unity, and facilitate sort of more tolerance for differences in our world. But first we have to be tolerated, because we have to really understand how to tolerate ourselves and these differences.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I feel like that's what the Indigos are here to teach us as well, to really honor everyone's individuality, to honor our personal, authentic self. And the moment we can accept that and honor that, we can accept it in the world around us. And I feel Sunny and I were just talking on the previous show about everything that's going on in the world, about, you know, the separation that we're seeing and the judgment and people going so much into hatred. I go on social media every day and I see so many hate messages of one person to another. And I feel what the Indigos are here to teach. The Indigos here to bring in a new era of peace, of one person to another. And what I see a lot of Indigos struggling with is that sense of not fitting in and not acknowledging who they are, but and that is preventing them from really bringing forth their mission. So our intention with the show is to really have the Indigos coming together and learn how, you know, special our mission is and what we can do when we actually all come together.
Absolutely.
Like kind of like having the light go around the globe, right?
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying about authenticity, because I was having this thought the other day, and it's funny how we're always talking about how Indigos are so unique and how Indigos are so sensitive and all these things. But what's so funny about it is, if everybody were to sort of decondition themselves, you know how we have all these conditions in the world and in society, when we're socialized, we really try to fit into that zone. And Indigos have that warrior type personality where they literally can't. They either learn a different way, literally can't tolerate foods. Like, they literally cannot be any different than they are, where a lot of other people can. They can compromise, they can fit here, they can fit there, and that joy of fitting in sort of outweighs the joy of just being who I truly am. So when Indigos step into their power and show that sort of example of authenticity, I feel like it's actually an example of what all of us have the potential of being, is just authentically you, whatever that looks like. But you really have to clear that screen of conditioning in order to get there.
Yeah.
And since the Indigos can't do it any differently, they have to be sort of the example of that authentic self.
Yeah. And we both, it's so interesting and it's so beautiful to do the show with you, Candace, because every time we share our stories or we do the prep for the show, or we talked with you last night, John, it's like, oh, this is how I felt. And you went through that same journey. So how was it for you, Candace, before you knew you were an Indigo? How was life?
So confusing. Let me just be honest. It was deep. I felt like I had deeper experiences basically every day. I was just talking to Tony outside about imaginary friends when you're younger. And a lot of kids have it, but what a lot of kids don't realize is that those imaginary friends aren't so imaginary. You know? And I kind of knew that, but it was kind of looked down on, like, okay, stop playing with your imaginary friend. I mean, she had a name and everything. And I think for me, it was confusing because I had these deeper experiences. I had these knowings that no one around me was really validating because they didn't have them or it wasn't acceptable. And I think when finally at 7 years old, when I was given that label, ADHD, it made me feel in a way like it was heartbreaking, to be honest. I think for me it was heartbreaking because I felt like, oh my gosh, my gift is being taken. This ability I have is being I'm being told that I shouldn't be like that. I shouldn't be the way that I am. It's not okay. And no one else, talk about separation. I was just talking to a client about this yesterday. I remember feeling like I am the only one who's different and everybody else is the same. Because I was the only kid in my elementary school that had this label and that was taking Ritalin. The only kid. This is mid-'80s. Now it's a lot different. Now so many kids are taking things, but I was the only one, and it was such a feeling of isolation from a young age of there's me and then there's everybody else. And that followed me for many, many years. And but there's a lot of positive sides as well. I'm just saying in the system, it felt very isolating and scary and confusing. Like, why is this happening? But then as I got older, I noticed the gifts. I noticed, wow, I'm really good at certain things, like really good at certain things, and not so great at others. But the things that you're good at, usually as an indigo, you're really good at. And communicating and understanding and feeling everything could also be very confusing, but also a gift because I knew what people were feeling and I knew what people needed. And so I always felt that connection, like a deep connection with animals, with nature, with people. So there are many phases of it, but to sum it up, it felt special and confusing.
Yeah. And what was some of the things besides being able to see spirits, besides being highly sensitive, besides being empathic? And we talked about that, high sensitivity in indigo children in our last show. What were some of the other things that you felt what made you different?
The way that it was very interesting. I would have a very quick wit about me, but it could go either way, where someone would say something, it would either throw me this way or this way because I could tell if you're lying or I could tell if you're honest. And most people would be like, why is she acting like that? Why is she doing that? I'm like, because you're lying. It's very, but I hear this a lot about for indigo parents of indigo children. A lot of the things they say to me, I'm like, yep, that's correct. That was me. Yeah. Where,
it's the BS detector that we talked about, that lie detector that the indigos have. And that's why they don't want to conform. Yeah.
But the other thing is there's very little tolerance for anything that's not in truth. The tolerance thing. And a lot of parents have problems with that. I know my parents had problems with it. I could not tolerate certain things because of the oversensitivity. Yeah. I could not tolerate, we talked last week about certain colors, certain clothing, certain foods. Like not having enough sleep was extremely important. And just all those kinds of sensitive things, mental sensitivities, spiritual sensitivities, physical sensitivities. It was all encompassing.
And you didn't know. And it feels like nowadays I see the difference because a lot of the indigos that were born in the 70s and 80s are now parents. Yeah. And they've gone through their own journey. And if they've done the healing or have that awareness, okay, I'm an indigo, they can take care of their kids a little bit differently.
Totally.
But I feel like, back in the 70s and 80s, it was still a very new concept. And I didn't even hear about what an indigo is until I was in my early 30s.
Wow.
So there was no information that was out there that I came across that would say to, even explain to my parents why I was different or why I was reacting a certain way to the environment. And very similar to you, I was, I think I was very lucky that I was raised in an 800 people village. Yeah. So there was a lot of peace and calm. Yeah. And my primary school had 40 kids in 4 years. Like grade 1 through 4 was 40 kids. And I think it was perfect for me. I think my soul chose to be there because I had that chill environment.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
I don't think I could have grown up in a city like Los Angeles. And I remember moving to LA, and before I knew I was an Indigo, I think I spent the first couple of weeks not wanting to leave my apartment, and I lived in the middle of Hollywood, right off Cahuenga and Franklin. I'm like, this is really intense over here. I don't know if I can handle this energy.
So much energy, yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting what you said, though, about, you know, there was no books yet for parents to understand what to call it. What I find a lot of times is, and you'll look at, you know, blogs and things, people talk about this all the time, is that even when people do hear the word indigo and do start reading into it, they don't want that to be the answer. Especially in the olden days. It was like, oh no, that's an excuse for a psychiatric issue, or that's an excuse for a behavioral problem, or that's an excuse for oversensitivity. And there's so many other diagnoses with children that I'm seeing that have slight autism as well, where they have this extreme sensitivity and they actually call it something. It's like it's another thing that's wrong. And I'm thinking, gosh, how empowering if we could just take all those things that are wrong and be like, actually, that's right. Actually, here is the explanation of what's going on with your kid. And it doesn't mean it's special. It doesn't mean it's something that you can't understand because it's from another universe. It just means it's a positive explanation for a previously negative label.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. And it feels like there is so much labeling, and there's more and more labels. If you look at the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, back in the 1960s, there were about 150 psychiatric labels in the DSM. Now it's 350 something. So it's more than double. There's a new label coming at every time. And I have a very dear friend, and he's like, they're going to come up with selfie disorders and texting disorders. And you kind of see like every kind of behavior kids now displaying these days, it's being turned in a disorder. And what it does, it teaches a kid that they are broken.
And what that does is it actually puts you out of order of your own system, your own alignment, your own source. And that's why people are doing overly external things, because they're like, well, this is broken. How do I get what I really need? Because I'm not able to find my own source. I've been told it's wrong. So you shut it down. And I feel like that's what a lot of our health issues, a lot of indigos have autoimmune. It's interesting, these studies I've been reading, autoimmune, what does that actually say? Autoimmune is when your body turns on you. It's doing the opposite. Well, you're being told to do opposite of your naturalness.
It's kind of attacking yourself.
It's
That's
attacking
what autoimmune
yourself.
is about.
I have one, so I know what that feels like. It's not fun.
It's not fun, no. But it's part of this, something is wrong with me. And then it creates that self-punishment, which is what the labeling creates. And we talked about it a little bit before, that, you know, yes, indigo is a certain label, but it's, for me, it's, or like people see it as a label, but for me it's not a label. And I just want to put it out to the audience as well, to not use being an indigo as a label, but as an explanation for how we feel and how we show up in the world. Don't see it as, okay, if, you know, now my kid is labeled with ADD and now I'm labeling that kid an indigo. It's like, no, my
take
kid,
another one.
My kid is totally beautiful and whole and complete, just acts a little bit different in the world, perceives the world differently than other children, and that's totally fine, because here's the explanation. My kid is an indigo or crystal or rainbow child.
I love that. I love that you just said that, because it is true. It's not another label. It's an explanation. And I think it's so cool, too, because the difference that I see in all of these kids, ourselves included, is it's a holistic perspective they're coming in with, because they are here to make things more whole, if you really think about it. And if you really look at like what is a holistic perspective and list some of the things, you'll see that, oh my gosh, that is where that's coming from. That agitation, it's because she's not, you know, and it makes sense, but it's a lot of work. I'm not going to say that it's not. It's a lot of work to figure these kids out sometimes, because they are so unique and different. There isn't one size fits all for an indigo. It's like, oh gosh, what are her sensitivities? What are his reactions? What is... You know, and so it is a case-by-case, holistic experience with these kids, and it all makes sense. It's all, okay, it's not going to work this way. It's not going to fit here. We can't go to the normal doctor and figure it out. You got to go to the acupuncturist. You got to go to the herbalist. That's the way it is with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to go, since you brought it up already, let's talk a bit about some of the characteristics of an indigo. And I know we both, like one of the big aha moments we had was with Doreen Virtue's book, The Care and Feeding of Indigo. And I think she so beautifully describes what an indigo is in that book. So what are some of the characteristics that you had that would say, yes, this is why I am an indigo?
Extremely intuitive, almost negatively empathic, because it was just so, I mean, it's not negative, obviously, but very, very empathic as a kid, like a sponge. I was very specific with the things I was into. If I loved something, I was going to go all out and get a straight A's. You know, if I didn't love it, I wouldn't even look at it. Couldn't even deal. No attention span for that. It wasn't aligned with me. Lots of energy, really talented in the creative arts. You know, I was a musician. I was a pianist, a violinist, a gymnast. I mean, everything. Oh, look, there's me. That's right
so
before I was diagnosed. Look at that sweet little girl. Yes, but very talented, and I mean that's just what I've heard, but it's true. And outside the box, like I just did things differently, and a very strong will. That's one of the things too. I mean, it was very much like I want this, I don't want this. I knew exactly what I wanted at all times, and if it wasn't going to go that way, oh my goodness, because that is not what I need. Yeah, I'm sure there's more. Those are the ones that pop into my head.
Well, it's interesting you mention all that because I found a comparison between indigo children and ADHD, and then what are common to both and what are traits of indigo, what are traits of ADHD.
Love
so I have that on the screen for people who want to see.
Wonderful.
But yeah, I mean, you mentioned having strong self-esteem, connection to source, getting frustrated by ritual-oriented systems that require little creativity. Do not respond to guilt trips.
Oh, yeah.
Want good reasons. Get bored easily with assigned task.
That's right.
Are easily distractible. Can do many things at once.
Oh, that's huge. Yes.
You mentioned strong intuition, abstract thinking, very young, gifted and talented. You mentioned that. Talented daydreamer, visionary, deep, old, wise-looking eyes is another one.
Yes.
Spiritual intelligence. You know, that's probably from many lifetimes, right? And often express anger outwardly rather than inwardly, and having trouble with rage.
Oh, it's so funny. I just wrote down rage when you said that because that was one of the big ones. Rage. It's not even anger. It's not even a temper tantrum. It's full-on rage. And this happens with these kids. And you're like, oh my God, are they crazy? No, they are so passionate about a certain thing. You mentioned so many things I wanted to touch on, but now I can't remember. I didn't write them down.
I should have it up.
You should. Yeah.
But it's interesting because I was like that. I was like super shy as a little kid, and I was very drawn inwardly. I had a really hard time having social contacts. I remember going to my mom had to go to the hairdresser, and it took 2 or 3 hours, and I was sitting there drawing. I loved drawing and creating stories as a little kid. And I could do that for hours, but I was also really passionate about what I wanted, and my mom, and I cannot remember that, so my mom still tells me they would take me out on Sunday walks because my parents would always take us into nature as little kids, my brother and myself. And we would come to an intersection. My parents wanted to go right, and I'm like, no, I want to go left. And I would stand in the middle of the intersection and throw a tantrum. I was like, I really want to go left today. And they couldn't have me go right if I wanted to go left. And I feel like that is such a trait of these indigos. On one hand, they have this high sensitivity and are really, really can often withdraw from life because they are so sensitive. I'm doing this because that's often what I feel like I needed to withdraw from my environment because it was too harsh for me to be in certain environments. But then other times I was really stubborn and determined, and I would like really stand up for what I believed in.
Yeah, it's funny, and that's another thing to mention is it does swing the pendulum.
It does swing.
It's not bipolar. It's just you are going with what you feel.
Yeah.
And I really want to mention this whole multitasking, I think, is a very big thing too.
That's what I'm doing it.
Perfect example right here. I honestly cannot remember a time. So I'm in school now, furthering my education in another direction. And I was sitting there this morning for 2 hours studying, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need a radio. I need TV. I need someone to be talking for me to be able to stay on task. And yeah, I could do it anyway, but I was like, I prefer there being music so that I can check out when I feel like it and then come back in. It's almost like a drain, an energy drain to just stay on this one thing. I need to be doing all these things. And guess what? I can do all these things really well, really fast. And a lot of people are like, how are you going to do all that? I'm like, I can't not do it that way.
Yeah.
Sorry for the double negative, but it's impossible for me to not do 100 things at once and really, really fast. And if it's not done fast, it's very frustrating.
And it gets
the patience thing.
Yeah, and it becomes very boring.
Oh,
I remember,
so boring.
and I haven't done it in a while, but as a kid or teen, my grandma taught me how to knit and crochet. And I would watch TV and I would knit and crochet, and my mom was like, "How can you do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's totally easy for me to do 5 different things at the same time, to actually focus over here and focus over here."
Yeah, it like feeds you. You're like, ooh. And you know, this whole Instagram thing, you guys know I've already told you I love Instagram. But it's like, I'm like, oh, let me just check this real quick. Okay, back to this.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm bored. Hold on.
Yeah.
And it really stimulates. You know, indigos need a lot of stimulation.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so sort of kinetic and visual and all of this, because we're constantly needing that inspiration.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just want to share a little bit of, you know, like what was the growing up as an indigo for me, what was the hardest thing is that I had this vision for my life. I knew as a 5-year-old what I wanted my life to look like. But every time, and that is something that a lot of these indigo kids have, they kind of come in with a sense of their purpose, what their purpose is in this world. And from early childhood on, they actually need that support, like really going, yeah, you're going to do it, or what do you need? And what I was experiencing in my peer group was more the opposite. I would share my purpose and they would think it's like complete silly or ridiculous what I was sharing. So that is one of the traits of the indigo. It's like we have a big mission on this planet because we are ushering a new era. We're ushering the new golden age, which is an era of peace, of coming together, of understanding, getting rid of the separation that we've been living for so many lifetimes. And we have this sense of purpose even as a young kid. And what I see with a lot of indigos, even the indigos I interview, or even how I spend a lot of my life, I had a hard time associating with people in my peer group because I felt like they don't get me.
Yes.
It was easier for me to actually be around adults because
They're wiser.
Yeah, that they're wiser. And
They relate
and
more to your
was
old
having
soul.
better conversation, a better
Yeah.
time. And I think that is one of the traits of the indigos. They need to have someone to talk to, and often it doesn't show up as someone who's the same age, but someone who might be 10, 20 years older.
Well, that's actually one of the
30
main
years older.
characteristics of indigo is they really only like to hang out with indigos because they feel like those are the only people that really get them. But until people really wake up to their indigo, you feel very alone. You feel like I'm just by myself.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
isolated. And that's what we were saying last week when we found each other. We were like, When you find other indigos, you're like, yes. Oh my gosh, I feel so comfortable. Yeah, it's so true. We're like, it's like a quick connection.
Yeah.
Because for so long, you're like, I'm just relating to my grandma. Or like, you know, it's funny.
Yeah. No.
But it's a big one.
And I just want to share, and I'm going to read it. I think I'm going to read it towards the end of the show. I brought a letter.
Oh, great.
From my dear auntie. She wasn't my biological auntie. She was one of my friend's mom. And I lived in New York for 6 months, and I lived at her house for 6 months while I was working in New York. And she was an older indigo. She was in her 60s at that time. And what I also found with the indigos, I don't think we're seeing age differences or racial, cultural difference. We're seeing the oneness in everything. And this is how it was with her. Even though she was way older than I was, it was like this friendship, like she was my best buddy. Yeah. And we got along so well that even the daughter's like, I cannot understand how you can get along so well with my mom. Like, that's like pretty amazing. I'm like, it was
Definitely.
part of my soul tribe. And she was actually a medical doctor. She came from the Philippines. She went to medical school in the Philippines, and she worked at one of the big research hospitals on the East Coast as a medical doctor. And when I met her, she had already retired but kept her medical license. But she was doing all these other things like aerosoma and acupuncture and acupressure. And she had the abilities to put her hands on you and actually heal. There were physical healings happening that were actually documented by doctors just from her hands touching someone's body. She's like, my hands can teach the body how to go back to its wholeness. So she was one of these early indigos. And I always had the feeling, like I asked her one day, I'm like, Auntie, if you were that super psychic, which is, another trait of the indigos, being super psychic, if you were that super psychic and if you had these healing abilities, why didn't you why did you study medicine? She's like, I didn't want to get persecuted. I didn't want to get burned at the stake.
Which is what so many of us feel in some way, is that, oh my gosh, if I show my gifts, like a lot of indigos, not to cut you off, but I think this is important too. A lot of indigos try to hide their power for a lot of years because they're so afraid that if I show them, I'm going to get rejected. I'm even in your own family, in your school system.
I was just
prime
thinking
example.
that. Yeah, just because when you're born, you come into it just freely. Yeah, you know who you are, but then it gets shut down from from the adults and other people around you who don't understand.
Hence the massive amount of fear and this upper limits issue that we can talk about later, where if you get too close, you have to sabotage. A lot of indigos do that as well because you're so used to that persecution. That's what it feels like. So
Powerful.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful. I'm meeting my Indigo tribe now because we're like, I totally get you. Or even last time we were talking, I'm like, I can hear your thoughts.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, wait, let me change that thought. Shoot.
Yes. Incredibly observant is one of the major traits, right?
Yes.
And be able to see things on multiple levels.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that people don't understand. It's like they don't think we're paying attention, but we really are paying more than attention.
Yes.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And that goes along with the whole knowing what's going to happen thing, because you're so cued into energy. I can remember multiple times growing up, I'd be like, I know that this is going to happen. I still do it nowadays where I'm like, I know this is going to happen. This is pointless that this person still needs to do this. And people get mad at you because they're like, oh, you think you're psychic? I'm like, no, I am. Like, I know that that's going to happen. Lo and behold, 24 hours happens. And you're like, darn it. I don't know if I could have changed it or stopped it, but I knew it was going to happen. So I prepared. It's kind of a cool thing, but it's also a little scary because you're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And like when people don't have information, a lot of times it leads to assumptions, right? Or they think the worst or something like that. Do you guys find that you do that, or do you feel that you have the inner knowing and you don't want to believe it? You want to give them the benefit of the doubt, the people that you're interacting with? Both?
Absolutely both. I have the intuition, and I'm like, but it comes from a loving place when it's intuition. And if it's fear, I can usually now know, oh, that's a fear-based thought based on previous perceptions, based on, I can tell now when something is divinely true about someone and when something might be fear-based, and that's when I don't say anything. I'm like, let's
that
play
was my
this
next
out.
question. What do you say when you know someone's lying to you? You can feel it, but how do you react? Do you just stuff it and just know to be careful?
I'm extremely outspoken. I don't know if you can tell.
No.
But I'm like, so you're lying? So you're lying. So we're not going to be talking. Not quite that harsh, but I am pretty known for just being like, that's not true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people are like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, we both know that's not true.
Yeah.
Kristie nicer.
I'm
softer.
I'm a Libra. You're Leo.
Well,
You have the
Cancer.
fire
I'm
up here.
Cancer.
I was going to bring
But
that
I act
in.
like a Leo.
I was going to say, does it have something to do with astrology, with your astrological
Yeah. And
makeup?
I think I'm a total. I'm very diplomatic that way.
Yes, you are.
But I feel like I've also gone on a journey because as a kid I was very outspoken about my truth. I was really rebellious about bringing my truth forward and sharing it. And for a while I didn't care. I'm like, if someone asked me a question, I would answer with my complete truth. But then the reception I was getting from the people around me, not my mom and dad, but more from peer group and some of the teachers, was rejection or ridicule. So after a while, I kind of toned down my BS detector.
Yeah.
And kind of what you were saying, I felt like, okay, even though I can see the truth about people, I don't want to see it because it's too painful. Let's turn that off.
Yes.
Or if someone asks me about my truth, it's too painful to share. Let's turn that off. So I actually turned it off for many, many years. Kind of how you took, psychoactive medication that turned off your abilities because you were this unique light being. It's kind of, I had to turn of certain abilities I had as a gift, as a child,
Yes.
in order to actually not be in so much pain
Yes.
with the way
Oh,
I was perceived in
100%
this
Oh my
world.
gosh,
agree.
yes.
Oh yeah, get
And-
chills on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I had to do as I went through my own healing journey, and I mentioned on Sunday's show, I studied
Yeah.
different modalities,
Sure.
and I really worked on my unconscious belief. What is there, like in the epigenetics,
Yes.
past lifetime, doing the Akashic records,
To get back
clearing
to
it
the root
up.
of who you are
That's
versus
right.
who
Exactly.
everyone said
Yeah.
you should be
Yeah.
or
Look, you guys,
aren't.
true self for your health. That is what it's all about.
Let me bring it in.
Yes,
Go
I
ahead.
made
Yes.
this.
Oh wow.
It's true
So,
though,
yeah.
the true authentic self. Once
Yeah.
you get to that place, you're like, oh, this is what I've shut down.
And that-
Exactly.
And it heals everything.
Yes.
That's why we search out those modalities, the astrology, the numerology, the whatever we connect with, the
Yeah.
Akashic records, in order to
Yes.
bring back who we are,
That's
Yes.
right.
who we lost when we
Yeah.
were a kid.
Isn't
In
that
some
so
way.
awful?
It really is.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting how you talked about this whole persecution, that we feel like we've been persecuted. And I've done a lot of readings in the Akashic records with myself and friends and people around me. And what I'm seeing, I see these people who are indigos, who
Yeah.
are healers, and you know, one of the indigo traits is these kids have a gift in a really specific area. Some are scientists, others are healers, others are really good in the medical field, others are really good at, you know, politics, or bringing healing through their music or their voice or art. And I see that, and it's, I think we need to nurture that in these children.
I agree.
And what I'm also seeing, I see a lot of people who had these healing abilities for a long, long time, and then you go into the Akashic records and you actually see past lives or ancestral lives of really being burned at the stake,
Yes.
going back to the Inquisition. I see people, or even for myself, that had to make oath to not speak their truth, to hide their truth, or they
Absolutely.
had a gift. And sometimes if they were forced to make an oath to not use these gifts, or they had a loved one who was worried about them, and they promised that loved one to never use these gifts again in order for the family to be safe. And I feel like that's what we're healing right now as indigos.
Yeah.
We do
It's
this.
so
Yeah.
true. And that's why I think a lot of indigos, this is why I created that Soul Lab program online, because a lot of indigos have a lot of emotional healing that they need to do, because until you get to the core of those negative emotions, you can't touch your intuition, which is an
Yes.
indigo's gift. Your third eye is indigo.
Yeah.
So that is, it's got a screen on it, I say. And when you do these exercises and you do the emotional healing, you're wiping that screen and you're like, this is my true self. This is who I am. And your gifts start coming back and everything starts having this limitless feel. But until you do that emotional work, especially if you're one of our age, you're a little older
Right.
indigo, and you've had some conditioning that was not really
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
good for your gift, you're going to have to do the healing. You can't do a spiritual bypass and just say, oh, I know better now. You actually have to do the work. You have to feel it to heal it. And when you feel it and you're healing it, all of a sudden you're real.
Yeah.
So you become real when you feel, because you heal.
I love that.
I love it.
It's just the path.
Yeah.
It's just
It
the
is
truth
the
about
path.
it.
And don't you feel that
Absolutely.
maybe one of the gifts of pain is wisdom?
Absolutely. Wounds to wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, alchemy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're doing right now as adult indigos. We're looking at our journey. We're like, oh my gosh, this is the wound. We've done the work. Let's
Yeah.
alchemize it and let's share it with others so they don't.
They don't
either
have to have the wounding.
Yes.
Exactly, or they don't have to go through it, or they have children who are these beautiful indigo, crystal or rainbow children, and these people can recognize that they have one of these really amazing kids, and they know how to support them through their journey.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of like why we're doing the show.
Absolutely.
To really share the beauty of you know, these kids.
And would you say the purpose of the show is to create a community for the indigos,
Yeah.
but also to educate people who really don't understand who these indigos are or
That's
who these
right.
crystal children are?
More tolerance.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
would you say, how would we relate to them so that they don't feel excluded, they feel included? The people who may not relate to being an indigo, how would we relate to them?
Honestly, the easiest answer is being more unconditional with yourself, because that's reflecting in others. When we're conditional with people, you're different. A little
Yeah.
judgment. When you can find within yourself and do your own self-healing, you naturally are more connected. You're naturally, you stop judging. Because if there's judgment, there's not love.
Okay.
So to have unconditional love, which I believe is the core of all healing, it's such the highest vibration is unconditional love. When you have that, there is no separation. But when you don't have that, that's the separation, which is creating the indigos who are super sensitive. They're feeling it times a million when someone's looking at them being like, wait, that's weird. But if these people were to look within and be like, why am I saying that's weird? Because I'm threatened by their uniqueness, because I'm threatened that they're actually more of who they truly are, because I'm threatened that they're speaking up and I kind of want to speak up. What is the core of that emotion? What is the core of that judgment? Really self-reflect, self-awareness, which I hope this show also provides, is people just taking a second look and being like, yeah, why do I do that? Because I was told that I should think that? Why?
And I also talk a lot about imprinting. Imprinting is, we're constantly being imprinted. I mean, the best example is by the media. We're being imprinted. This is how you have to look. This is how you have to think. So there's a constant imprinting or conditioning. But I like the word imprinting a little bit better than conditioning because it carries in our energy field.
Yeah, leaves an indentation or an outline, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And because the indigos are so highly sensitive, they're really susceptible to imprinting. And I have a very dear friend, and we talked on Tuesday or Monday, I can't remember. And I said to her, you know, what we're being, and she's a total indigo, of course. And I said to her, I think what we're being asked as indigos as well, instead of allowing ourselves to be imprinted by all this negativity, or we're talking about, you know, the whole social media and what is going on over there, and how people are going into anxiety or even hatred, instead of allowing that to imprint us, why don't we imprint others with like positive thoughts, with like authenticity or truth or love?
Because up
or
until now,
unity.
majority has ruled, and the majority is not peace and love. I mean, let's be honest.
No.
And that's the truth, though. You're absolutely right. I love to tell my clients, instead of being affected by everything, oh my God, I can't go there, it affects me. It's really strengthening that core of self-awareness and self-love to then go out and be like, I can affect you with my stable light. With the fact that I know this is true
It's so
without
funny.
all the doubt.
I'm looking at this picture of you. It says travel light on your shirt, and then it says stop the inner duality. There you go. So
Well, there you have it. I live my message clearly, and I wear it.
You sure do.
I love it. Aww.
Oh yeah, my shirt, by the way. Hope is dope.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love
I wear it all day long.
Oh yeah. Right.
I love it. So should we do like a quick, like kind of like a little recap, so people
Yes.
kind of like know, okay, this is what an
And that's
indigo
one thing
is
is
about.
we're going to be all over the place with this
Yeah.
show. That's how indigos are. So people
Yeah,
can
yeah. By the way, it's all over the place.
yeah.
But by the way, the indigos who are watching be like, yes, they finally function the way I need to learn.
And I think that's it. We got to be
Dysfunction
authentic,
junction.
right?
Yeah.
So if I send you something during the show, just pick it up and start reading it while
know.
we're
So
on. Because I
true.
did. I sent you that traits thing. So here it is.
Perfect.
It's right.
And remember, we interviewed Candace for my documentary, for our documentary series,
Yes.
She'll Know the Rainbow.
Yes.
And I'm like, let me send you some questions. Like, why do you want to send me questions? Right?
I'm like, don't you want it to be authentic?
Right.
Yeah.
Don't you just
right.
want to go with the flow? She's
I'm
like,
like-
actually, yeah. Yeah, it's
But
good.
but what I do is it's so interesting because we put together the questions and then we never look at it, but
Never.
we answer everything that's in the question. It's
yeah.
a guidance that comes through, and it's I
Yeah.
think part of that indigo thing
the
to really
intention.
it's that guidance and
Yeah.
I remember I was lecturing a while ago with a guy who is very intellectual, really into his like
Left brain.
left brain and he would come up, he's like, okay, let's do this lecture, this is what you're saying, this is what I am saying. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And then we would do
You're
the
like-
lectures, and it was my turn to speak, and I had this guidance just channel through. I'm like, and I would go completely off topic.
Perfect.
But it affected the people who were there, because I said to him, for me, it's kind of like, I don't know who's going to be in the audience and what information they need.
Yeah.
So it's like, and he would always say, Kristie, you need to stay on topic. I made a plan. I'm like, I don't work like that. I don't work, which is another indigo twist. I don't work within the structure.
Yep.
I think I got a lot of structure because I was born and raised in Germany. So it
I
really
bet.
imprinted some structure into me. Otherwise, I would be completely lost.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
So there are some gifts to
Yeah.
to it, but it you do. You just have to make it work for you.
You know what? I don't know why I feel called to share this really quick about the anger, because I think a lot of people, going back to the traits of indigo, it is one of the biggest traits is anger, especially in kids. And I heard this a really amazing way of explaining it from one of these spiritual teachers that I love. And he said, it's like you're inflamed. Anger is like, it's inflammation. This is so not working for me that my body is reacting like an allergy.
Yeah.
through anger. And I thought for a lot of indigos, by the way, we have a hard time sort of expressing in a positive way because it's such an expression, it's such a feeling, it's such an emotion. So a lot of them just combust to get it out so it's cleansed.
Yeah.
Right.
So just thinking for parents that are watching, oh my God, my kid, it's all about peace and love, but they're warriors. And the way they get to the peace and love is by literally expressing and letting all this out and being a channel for stuff.
Well, it's like a pot boiling over, right?
Honestly,
I
yes.
mean, because we
Absolutely.
stuff so much, or I'll speak
much.
from my perspective. I stuff so much to the point where if it keeps happening, then it's gonna. But that's where I have to learn about boundaries, and that's a big one for me. As a
That'll be our next show.
Yeah.
Because it's
Boundaries.
huge for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially now. I'm hearing a lot.
Yeah.
So to recap, it's
Sure.
so what did we say? How do you recognize an indigo? Or if you're an indigo, if your child is an indigo, strong sense of purpose, determination, high sensitivity,
Psychic abilities.
Mm-hmm.
May remember past lives, have really deep dreams, may have really big fears, may see shadows and get scared. Telepathic.
telepathic,
Yeah.
yes.
Especially the crystals, very
Yes.
telepathic.
Yeah.
Sensitive to movies.
Extremely
sensitive to movies. So
Sensitive to the collective, what's going on in the universe, what's going on near you.
Yeah. And a talent and usually one area that is really, really strong.
and usually really connected to pets and animals.
Very.
Yeah.
And nature.
Right? Yeah.
And highly, highly creative.
Yeah.
That's basically.
And not functioning within the systems because the indigos are here to change the system. So they often have issues with the system, no matter if it's education or any kind of other system.
Food system.
And they will point out whatever is out of integrity.
Absolutely.
And need their alone time. We mentioned that before, right?
Yeah.
And needing to recharge.
You need to recharge more than most people, and you need balance. Balance is so key for indigos.
Yeah.
Instead of overdoing it or underdoing it, balance makes them so happy and immediate.
Yeah.
So if your kid is like acting out, just take some alone time, give them a hug, and say, you know what, take a few minutes, have a little water, cleanse that out.
Yeah.
And really listen to them,
Oh
let
my
them
gosh, they need to be listened to.
express how they really feel, use their words, as they say,
Yeah, they feel very unseen and unheard in this world, and they almost need, and I remember this from experience, more than most. I need to show you more that I love you. It's like a constant reference point. It's a constant reminder that they're safe and it's okay, because this world feels very unsafe for young indigos especially. It's like they're lost. Like, what is this place?
Exactly. I've been looking down here because I pulled up an email my auntie in New York sent me a few years ago. And it was actually the email. I remember her coming into my room. I was downstairs. She was upstairs in her room. And she's like, I finally realized who I am. And I think you're one too. I sent you an email. You need to read it.
Wow.
She's like, I finally had this. I just did some research and I found this. And I think this is you and this is I. So I just want to, if it's okay, I would
I
love
love
to
this
read
letter.
this email. Yeah, you heard it.
I love
so
it.
let's see if I can make it through it without crying. I usually cry when I read this.
It's okay. You can cry. That's the kind of show it is.
So this is from my auntie Magdalena. Finally, I am enlightened of who I am and awake to my true greater purpose in life, which I have been searching since childhood, but it has felt like the world isn't set up to my kind. Why? I felt wise, knowledgeable to share wisdom beyond my years, and that always got me in trouble. The obligation to conform to the ways of society's logic made me feel out of place in today's world as I developed. I have always searched for an answer of why I perceived the world very different than most people around me. And I often felt misunderstood when I talked to people about what is real in their body, mind, and spirit, as well as the elements of this physical universe. Why? I have a strong intuition about certain things that most others do not have. This made me feel isolated and alone in my beliefs, to a point that even my family, friends, and colleagues misunderstood me. All of this made me feel antisocial and emotionally sensitive unless I am with like-minded people. I often felt disempowered and overwhelmed by too much authority imposed onto me by the beliefs of the academic scientific community. I have always felt like I was born to accomplish a special mission in this world and cosmos, and that made my life and my adulthood very difficult, for I am a truth seeker. I feel now that I'm here at the present with insights, And knowing everything makes it easy for me to access the whole spectrum of what is known in the paranormal and psychic world without filtering or denying these realities. My mind sees clear pictures of what will be there in future technology, knowing what we need in the future based on what we have in the present. And now accept that I'm here to help raise the frequency of the planet and everyone living here as a preparation for the quantum leap into the future, by bringing an unconditional healing of not only body, mind, and spirit, but also the earth and the universe. Wow. Finally, I am awake to my true purpose of existence. Now I have to exploit all actions of ideas, insights, and mind development to be able to understand the reality of detachment and open-mindedness. I need to heal my emotional intelligence of judgment, fear and confusion, past failure and guilt. Now I have to free myself and my consciousness and spiritual identity from unnatural energy blockages and the karmic contracts that cause disruption in my lives. Finally, I have freedom. I can share my knowledge as wisdom to those to seek my unconditional healing love as I prepare for my spiritual path, to awaken and enlighten all Indigo children for their quantum leap into the future for a peaceful world and universe.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Basically,
I'm giving applause for
your
that.
entire self. Just kind of
Wow, just
phenomenal.
that having a sense of knowing who you truly are and just put it
Yeah.
out there. That
Yeah.
that just resonated so powerfully. That
Yeah.
is beautiful and so incredibly written.
Yeah.
So perfect.
And I think this is it kind of defines what we Indigos feel.
Yeah.
Absolutely defines it perfectly. And I
Mhm.
think, how old were you when you found out what it was?
32, 33.
I think I was 25 when I
Yeah.
put the name to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
But can you imagine being like, oh, yeah, that's me? And you're
Yeah.
like 7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you don't have to do all the healing that she was talking about and
Right.
finding your spiritual identity, your
Yeah.
true self. Because so
Yeah.
many Indigos, because of these wounds, they identify with things that are not truly them.
Yeah.
That spiritual identity
And
is
think
what
of the
Indigos are
effect
here
that
for.
would have on the planet as a
Amazing.
whole. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because so
Absolutely.
much of the
Wholeness.
problem is trauma in life,
right.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's traumas repeating themselves throughout. It's the
Yeah.
cycles, and if we could stop
Yeah.
it, break the cycle.
The patterns, because people also don't know how to heal the patterns. They recognize, oh, here it comes again,
Yes.
but they don't realize how to integrate it. That's part of our
Exactly.
work, is helping people integrate.
You know
Yeah.
that song. Everyone thinks so cliche that I believe the children are our future, but it's so powerful.
And it's
it
so
really
true.
is so true. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside.
Let them be who they
inside,
are.
yeah. Give them a
Just let
sense
them
of
be who they
pride
are.
to make it easier. Show them, all the beauty. I
Sing
think
it.
yes, I mean, no, but it's such a powerful song because
It
when you
is.
think of when you really
Yeah.
give power to those words and you really visualize that song, it is a
Brilliant.
greatest love of all. That's what it
Greatest
is.
of all, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That guy was smart.
Yes,
Yes.
he was.
Girl.
Yeah.
Guy.
No, Guy wrote it. Guy originally sang it, and then
And then
Whitney
redone. That's right.
Whitney redid it.
Yeah.
By the voice. Oh God, her
Yeah.
voice.
Indigo.
Yes. Yes.
Total Indigo.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
That's what we should do next week is share a list of celebrity Indigos. People
Yes.
that people would relate to and be like, oh, yeah, that's right. And look at this. I remember my mom giving me that list when I was younger. And being like, well, it's ADD, but it's also like you're extremely talented and creative. And these are a list of other ADD actors, like Tom Cruise, I think, was one. I just remember
Robin
thinking, oh, there's
Williams,
hope.
probably.
Definitely
Right?
Robin Williams.
Yes.
I was like, oh, there's hope. Maybe it is good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Look for the positive in all of it.
Let's look for the
right? 'Cause-
positive.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. It's all positive, but we have been conditioned since childhood to believe that it's not.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
know, and that's why we're get so excited and so giddy when we find another and that gets us.
That's right.
Because we just it's the telepathic communication
Yes.
sort of. It's just like
Yeah.
multiple levels all at once.
Yeah.
If I can
Yeah.
explain it that way.
And I think that is that you totally just said it. It's a conditioning. You have to be XYZ in order to be loved. XYZ in order to be successful, and it's just not working anymore. I think what the Indigos are showing us, the way to be loved and be successful is to be our true selves.
Because what
Yeah.
I believe in my own journey, I noticed that the change for me happened when I said, whether you love me or not, I still love myself. Whether you get it or not, I'm still going to do everything that I really am.
Yeah.
And that's when life started reflecting me and being like, yeah, we want that too. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I owned it. When you own your truth, others can't not own your
Yeah.
truth.
Absolutely.
It's the reality.
And that kind of reminds you of what's going on right now. And the reason that things are so chaotic is because in many ways, consciousness has evolved to a special point, where we're, beyond a lot of what they're trying to reset us back to.
That's right.
And that's why there's this resistance. That's why there's this revolt. That's why there's this uprising, is because, hey, we're not that anymore. And I think that all of that is a big part of what the work of the the spiritually enlightened, or the people who have done the hard, heavy, soul searching work to get to get here. And I'm grateful to see that we are rising up and saying we're not going back to the past. We're here now.
Yeah.
A lot of work to get to this point, so let's keep moving
Let's
forward.
Keep moving.
Forward. Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Love this, ladies. Thank you.
it.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me be a part of it. I love it. It's incredible.
so fun.
And we're already at the end of the show. Can you believe it? I mean, 50
does
minutes
that
just
go
went
so
by so
fast?
quickly.
Always.
Well, it's your favorite subject,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Well, when you're
when you're
speaking your passion, time flies by.
Yeah, and when you're with the
heck
right
yeah.
people.
Yes,
right.
right. So I just want to encourage people to comment on the video and to share the video with your friends.
Yes, please do.
And say, hey, if you're feeling this, and you have other friends who are sensing that they are feeling the same way, share it, and also share it to other people to help them to be educated, right?
Yeah.
So it's on UBN, the UBN Facebook, so Universal Broadcasting Network Facebook, but then we share it on all your
All of our
pages as well.
platforms too,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just get it out there and let's grow, because we need to create a community, right?
That's right.
We need to change the world by
Come
bringing
together,
this together.
stronger when you're
Yes.
together.
Absolutely.
And this lives on in audio form too, so people can listen to it. And it's right now video as well. So just for those who are listening by audio, they now know it's video, and video now knows it's audio. So there you go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So fun, you guys. See you next week.
We'll be back next Wednesday with more about Indigos.